All right, everybody. The vibes are high. Celtics, Lakers, Celtics with a big win on a Saturday night at the TD Garden that had everybody feeling good after the game. It's daylight savings. We're trying to figure out what time it is. We almost missed this recording, but important part is we made it. We're here. It's Green with Envy. So you guys know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Hopefully you're doing pretty damn good after that Celtics 111-101 victory over the Los Angeles Lakers last night at the TD Garden. And joining me, as he does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. And Greg, let me wish you a happy belated International Women's Day. Good morning.
It's a great way to start the pod. Yeah, man, this is interesting recording here. Daylight savings. I'm gonna save that for in and out segment, but I got some thoughts on daylight savings for sure, man. How you feeling this morning as we get this
Honestly,
pod going?
I feel great. I mean, like you said, we'll talk about daylight savings time. Threw us both off. We set to record this at a certain time this morning, and both of us woke up just like kind of. You texted me before I had the same thoughts of like, I don't know what's happening right now, but something's off. And it took me about half hour, 45 minutes to figure it out. But I'm feeling great, man. I'm feeling great. Last night was a continuance of where we've gotten to with this Celtic season, where now we know when the games matter, who this team is, what they're bringing to it, and the energy and electricity that this team has when they're playing at their peak. And remind you, this is all still without Kristaps Porzingis last night, what we're going to talk about, which this is a little bit of a side note. What is this illness that we've got here for 11 days? Like, there's not a lot of like, usually when a guy's out with an illness, like, oh yeah, and the flu's been going around this year. Like, that's like a national story of the flu going around. 11 days, I don't know. I'm a little concerned, and there's not been much made about it. So hopefully we get more about that. But even without KP, seeing the way that this team played, which I think the first half of last night's game was just one of the best halves of basketball that I've seen in a long time from both teams. And I think in the third quarter, just complete dominance from the Celtics. And of course, they had their little Celtics thing where, hey, let's make this close again. Let's not let everybody get too comfortable. But end of the day, this I'm feeling great because the Celtics are in a place right now, and we'll see on Wednesday another big test against the Thunder. But they're in a place right now where I still feel like at their best, they're not getting beat. At their best, they're not getting beat. Doesn't mean they're going to be fully healthy. Doesn't mean they're always going to play their best, but at their best, there's still no one better in the NBA.
Let's start with Al Horford, because I think
in
a game in which Kristaps Porzingis is out, right, and I think there's something to be said about matchups and why the Boston Celtics have the most versatile roster in the NBA especially with their stable of bigs that they have. When you're going up against the Lakers, who don't have any bigs, Rui's out, Jackson Hayes is out, right? So they're going fully small. It honestly probably didn't even make sense for KP to play in this game when you consider the way that Luka Doncic likes to play and the way that LeBron James likes to play. Like, Porzingis is not going to be out guarding on the perimeter the way that Al Horford was able to do in that game last night. Al Horford, by the way, another game over 35 minutes. Will we talked about that on a recent pod, 37 and a half minutes out of Al Horford last night. But when you think about Horford's versatility out there on the perimeter and the size and strength and the quickness that he's able to bring, Porzingis can't do all those things that Al Horford can do. Right. And if you play drop coverage against Luka Doncic, that's a death sentence. Right. So early in the game, I think what we saw, Jaylen Brown was so hyped up for that matchup that he didn't want to leave Luka. Right. There are a couple times in the first quarter where there was a miscommunication between Al and Jaylen, and it ended up for open shots for 3-point shooters. The Lakers hit a bunch of threes in that first quarter. And then it seemed like there was a moment where Al and Jaylen got together and were like, hey, we're just switching this, right? And then Jaylen allowed Al to do his thing and trust the 38-year-old to hold up on the perimeter. But I can't say enough about Al Horford, man. I mean, Jason Tatum, after the game, is extolling him. JJ Redick also post-game conferences was like, how good is Al Horford? Like Al Horford played one of his best games. We talked about him only coming out for certain games. Like you keep him in the garage. He was out there on his swangers, like busting Mike Jones through the streets last night. Throw Al Horford in the streets of Houston after a game like that.
Yeah, here. This is from Tim Bontemps. I saw this earlier today, and this is from, I guess, at Stats Williams. So this is from the post game last night. James, Doncic, and Austin Reeves, the top 3 perimeter scorers for the Lakers and among the best in the league, isolated Horford 23 times on Saturday per second Spectrum tracking data. It's the second most isolations against any player in a single game since player tracking began in 2013-14. The result: Horford allowed 0.39 points per direct play per second Spectrum, the second best efficiency by any player to defend at least 15 isolations in a game in the past 12 seasons. Overall, the Lakers shot 7 for 23 against Horford, with Luka and LeBron combining to go 3 for 14. Drop a
Damn, bro. I didn't know it was like that. I knew the eye
is
test.
like that.
I knew the eye test told me that Al Horford had a great game, but that's like a historically great game. And it's so
Yeah.
funny on when we posted the Al Horford is the Celtics X Factor video maybe a week ago, when we were talking about how great he's been playing of late. I think it was after the Denver game, right? We talked about how important he would be in that matchup. There are a couple people on TikTok that were just like, you guys overrate Al Horford so much. Like Al Horford is not that guy. And like, there were so many comments even after that one that was like, you clearly are a casual basketball fan. You clearly don't watch Al Horford. Like you haven't seen what he does against Giannis. You haven't seen what he does against Embiid. And I couldn't help but clap back last night, like on TikTok. I found the comment and I went to the guy. I was like, where you at, bro? Just with like howling, laughing emojis. Cause Al Horford was arguably the most important player on the court last night. Like it's him, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, all 3 of those guys had their part. But Al Horford, the Celtics don't win that game without Al Horford holding up in isolation, because Luka Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves. I don't know if you can read that stat again, Will, because it was just like mind blowing, but 0.39 points per
direct play, and they isolated him 23 times on Saturday, which resulted in 0.39 points per direct play, second best efficiency by any player to defend at least 15 isolations in a game since the 2013-14 season. Second best, and the names are LeBron James, Luka Doncic, and Austin Reeves. Like, and he's 38. He's 38, man. Like, I mean, they talked about the Brock. Like LeBron's the oldest guy in the league. Al's the 5th oldest guy in the league, right? And so it's once again, I love praising Al Horford. Nothing makes me happier than a big Al Horford game. And this is right there. Every time there's a big game, Al Horford just meets the moment, man. He meets the moment. And I was thinking about this, especially in that third quarter. Like you said, I love that you pointed out in that first quarter, you could tell that, as much as Jaylen wanted to set the tone with guarding Luka, you're totally right. That is what led to some of the miscommunications, where I think the Lakers got off to like what a 7-0 start, 11-4 or something like that to begin the game. And you're like, man, I know we're going to challenge Dorian Finney-Smith to make some shots, but he's like a high 30% like 3-point shooter. That's not like a guy that we're leaving out there. It's not Semi Ojeleye. He's got to give Semi a stray. Just this is what we do out here. But and so I love that you pointed that out. And then what I was thinking about last night, is this game was just like sitting on my mind afterwards, is just when you look, and this is also kind of removing KP, and you have that starting lineup Celtics go with last night, where it's Derek White, Drew Holiday, the Jays, and Al Horford. You basically have 5 guys that you can live with any switch. Like Derek White against some bigs, you're going to be like, man, we got to scram that out, or he's going to have to commit a foul. Other than that, the other 4 guys, Drew Holiday, the Jays, and Al Horford, name me a player that, there's obviously more ideal matchups than others, but name me a player that you're going to be super concerned that they can't put in, a good effort against, right? Like that doesn't happen on defense. We have 4 guys that 1 through 5. Like if you end up with Joker or LeBron or, even a Darius Garland, which last week against the Cavs, my favorite possession of the entire season defensively was Al Horford stopping 3 straight penetrations, including Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell on the same possession. Like the fact that we have those 4 guys Like, that's insane. And then Derek White's the fifth guy. Derek White, the
Mhm.
two-time all NBA defensive player, is the other guy who I'm like, maybe if you find the right big, you can really kind of get into him. Like, that's really crazy to talk about. And I think that third quarter, when the Celtics locked into the point that the Lakers had 6 turnovers in that quarter and only 5 made field goals, that felt like the epitome of all of it.
Yeah, and I think to the stat that you brought up about ISOing Horford 23 times in that game last night, clearly that was the game plan for the Lakers, right? We're going to put Al Horford in space and we're going to see if he can hold up at 38 years old. And bringing up Derek White is actually interesting because I was thinking about this after the game. Like maybe Derek White is the guy that if I'm the Lakers coaching staff in a finals matchup, he's the guy that we actually target,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because the LeBron James and Luka Doncic, they do their best work when they are the more physical offensive player going up against a smaller, slighter defender or a taller, slighter defender, right? Like if they get Porzingis in space, they'll be able to move him off the spot, right? Derek White is obviously a great defender, but I think against that matchup, he's actually kind of the weak link going up against Luka, going up against LeBron. There are a couple of times LeBron just put him under the basket and finished over him, right? So maybe that's a game plan matchup thing that they figure out. Should we see them in the NBA Finals? Which after last night, I was like, give me 7 games of Jaylen Brown covering Luka Doncic again. Like
Yeah.
that was some fun ass shit. But that was just a really interesting kind of takeaway from the game. Like they targeted Al Horford, he held up. In a playoff series, they're probably not going to do that, right? They're probably going to say, okay, maybe we don't target Al Horford for 7 games. Maybe we go after somebody else. Let's go after Derek White in game 2 and see
In
how
the
he
few
holds up
minutes they
against the
got
size.
of a Sam Hauser, they switched it immediately to like Sam Hauser being the guy.
Right.
And Sam once again, just like he did against the Maverick series, held up pretty well. Like he had a couple of really nice contested shots, did his thing. But you mentioned Jaylen Brown. I want to go to the Jays here, but I got one more Al Horford stat that I want to bring up to you here. And so this came from Chris Forsberg here. LeBron James, when defended by Al Horford this season per NBA tracking, so across both matchups, 6 points, 2 of 12 field goals, 0 of 4 from the 3-point line, and that's in about 4 minutes and 50 seconds worth of one-on-one data. So again, just Al Horford, when you play the LeBrons, when you play the Giannis's, we're not going to play the Embiids, but when you play those level of players, the Jokers, it's unfair to have an Al Horford in your back pocket like the Celtics do with everything else. And I think that brings us to the other major part of this night, because this game really was dominated by 3 guys for the Celtics. Al Horford, of course, we just covered. And then it's the Jays. It's Jaylen Brown. And you've already started to talk about him and his kind of, it's becoming the staple of his career almost. The way that he plays against Luka. Like anytime that you want to bring up, is Jaylen Brown worth this money? What type of player is Jaylen Brown? Roll the fucking tape with him against Luka in the NBA Finals and in a game last night. That will tell you everything you need to know about whether or not Jaylen Brown is the best second banana in the NBA, however you want to look at it. And I think last night, when you look at this 2-on-2 of sorts between LeBron and Luka versus the Jays kind of asserted their dominance as, listen, respect LeBron and Luka. LeBron's one of the top 2-3 greatest players of all time. Luka, one of the great up and coming young players. But right now, who's the best duo in this league? It's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, that's been the answer for a couple of years now, right? Do we want to start with Jaylen or Jason?
Take it whichever way you want to go. They both need to be talked about. So,
okay, let's start with Tatum. And I normally would start with Jaylen, but let's start with Tatum. So is there enough evidence now for the casuals that Jason Tatum is a top tier MVP candidate in this league? Like how many more games do you have to see Jason Tatum outplay a Luka Doncic, outplay a LeBron James, outplay a Joel Embiid, outplay Giannis Antetokounmpo? Like the only guys that I really haven't seen him go, the only guy I haven't seen him ever outplay is Jokic. I just haven't seen it. Like Jokic is just the better player, and he's probably the only guy in the league that I would definitively say is better than Jason Tatum. I don't think SGA is better than Jason Tatum. I don't think Giannis is better than Tatum, and I think that Tatum is just better than Luka Doncic. So as great as Luka is, Jason Tatum's a better player. He's a better defender. He's closed the gap on the physicality. He's closed the gap on the rebounding. He's a better rebounder at this point, and he's definitely closed the gap on the playmaking. Can you read his just basic box score stats from last night?
Yeah, absolutely. Jason Tatum last night, 40 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists, 12 of 28 from the field, 6 of 16 from the three-point line, 10 of 12 from the free throw line. And Greg, to your point, I was texting a friend of mine last night who was like, man, Tatum's going off right now. And I said, basically what you just said is what I said is like, Jokic is the best player in the world. I don't know if I can say, I think between Tatum, Giannis, and SGA, it's an interesting conversation. I have Luka fifth. Luka's just fifth. You got to play defense. I'm sorry, man. I as great as you are offensively, which even last night, he goes 50% from the field, 50% from three, has 34 points. You just still got to play some defense. Like basically, like almost all of the 71 points from the Jays kind of came off and around attacking you. So I'm sorry, you just got to be better about that. And so that group from 2 to 4 with Tatum, Giannis, and SGA. I was telling my friend, I was like, listen, there's a really strong case that Tatum is the second best player in the world right now. I think you can have a fun debate about it. I'm not 100% sure where I fall, but it's right there. It's right there between those three guys. And Wednesday, really exciting because to your point, Jokic is the only guy I think I haven't seen Tatum outplay. But SGA, when you think of some of and they haven't had a ton of matchups, so it's a very small sample size. But SGA has gotten the better of Tatum in a couple of these games the last few years. So I think
Wednesday is really good. SGA, I think they're the same level of player. But I've said it before. I think they're on the exact same level. I'm not hating on SGA. I'm just saying everybody that just for whatever reason doesn't like Jason Tatum, like enough. He's a top 3 player in the world, and it's not close. And we were texting Liptak. Liptak's our guy we always mention on the pod. We've had him on the pod in the past, so we always mention him. I wonder if people are like, who's this Liptak guy? But he's a huge Knicks fan, right? And he doesn't want to admit that Jason Tatum is a great, MVP level player. And I texted in our group chat last night. I was like, this is the best Jason Tatum's been, and it's not close, right? He is at the peak of his powers right now. He's putting it all together. And Liptak texted back. He was like, hey, I was just about to say the same thing. Like he is converting everybody in our lives that are huge basketball fans, casual basketball fans. When you watch a game, he pops off the screen. Everything that he's doing, the 3-point shots, the dancing in space that Luka can do, but he does it just as well as him. He's getting to the rim. Like, dude, his ability now to he's figured out, in the past, he didn't quite have his steps down when he was driving to the rim, right? You could kind of disrupt his drive rhythm and just put a body in a certain space, but he's figured out the little snake step that he does, like that little, it's kind of like a Pinoy step. It's a little Euro step that he does.
He had one last night where he kind of switched his hand to after that step and went to got him an even easier look just because he was able to, which he made it look so casual. I was like, okay, that was actually way more difficult than he made that look.
Yeah,
but that's just kind of where he's at.
He's doing all these amazing things, driving to the rim, and he's two-hand dunking on people. He's like that last play where I think it was the end of the first quarter, first half, where he got the ball, 5 seconds left, pushed up. Everyone's expecting him to shoot a step back 3-pointer, and he just goes right by Finney Smith and dunks the ball, almost jumping from the freaking free throw line. I actually saw a video recently of 2009 LeBron James and how freaky of an athlete that dude was, where he was getting up and down the court in 5 steps. Tatum's athleticism is at the peak that he'll ever be. He's the fastest, the quickest, the strongest that he's ever going to be at the same time. And it really looks like he's the best athlete on the court most nights.
And on top of everything that you just laid out, it goes back to a point that I mentioned earlier. He can guard 1 through 5.
Oh, man, his defense is so good.
That's the other part of this that I think is just so different if we're going back to, best players in the league. And I was saying this the other night, he has no holes in his game. What is the hole in Jason Tatum's game? Can you find something that he's not the best at? Yeah, sure. You can find that with almost everybody in the league, but what's the hole? What's the thing where let's just go down the list real quick. Nikola Jokic, you're like defense, it's better than maybe what he gets credit for, but it's not great, right? It's not great. Giannis can't really shoot, and honestly, his defense on the perimeter, you can kind of it's a little bit, it's not ideal. SGA, I think he's the closest one to Tatum with an all around game, but then Tatum's 5 inches taller than he is or something like that. So there's a little bit of difference there. Luka, we already talked about the defense, so that's why for me, I always go back and forth with SGA and Tatum. To me, the 2 easiest guys in the league, if you're trying to build a team around, it's those 2. And I don't even think it's close. I think building a team, everyone else, you got to get really specific about who you put, why you put them, where you put them. SGA and Tatum, name me players that don't fit around those guys. What
Right.
those guys do a little bit of everything. There's not a prototype of an NBA player that you can't put around them that they're not going to be able to work with offensively or defensively. And that's what I think makes the two of them easily the most versatile superstars out of this group that we're talking about.
Let's move on to Jaylen Brown, because I think we've said it all on Jason Tatum. We mentioned earlier, a little out of control to start that game, early turnovers, defensive errors that he was making. But he was just so pumped for this matchup with Luka Doncic, and he was relishing every moment that he got to guard Luka in space. The high pickup points, the active hands, the anticipation of where Luka Doncic is going to go. Like, Jaylen Brown has studied Luka Doncic. The moment Luka Doncic is in triple threat and goes to make his first move, Jaylen has super active hands. First dribble, he's trying to poke the ball away. I mean, how you don't see people just rip Luka Doncic. Jaylen Brown has like 1 to 2 steals just ripping the ball from Luka Doncic every single time they play, man.
3 steals last night, all on Luka. 3 of them. And all of them were basically just ripping just cookies.
Yeah, it like you don't see that happen to Luka Doncic. It's like Jalen and Lou Dort. Those are the only two guys that really give Luka this much of an issue. We just extolled all the praises on Jason Tatum for how good he is. Like, Jaylen Brown is not the level that Jason Tatum is. I think we can all finally agree on that, Greg. But Jaylen Brown, Jaylen Brown
Appreciate you calling yourself on that one.
is super special, and he gets up for these matchups, man. Like, you have two. This is the thing about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. They're the best conditioned athletes on the floor too. Like, the playoff rotations, Mazzulla treated this game as like a test, right? Jason Tatum plays the whole second half. He plays almost 46 minutes in that game. Jaylen Brown goes most of the game. He plays 42 minutes in that game, and they don't get tired. Luka Doncic is huffing and puffing up and down the court and holding his back every time he makes a mistake. LeBron James bows out of the game. He's 40 years old, so you can't really blame LeBron. But like, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, that they're going to be ready. Their cardio is going to be set. They're not going to get tired in any game, and they're going to play as many minutes as they're called upon to play. And I think that's what makes this duo special more than any other duo in the league.
Yeah, here's Jaylen Brown's stat line from last night. 13 of 25 from the field, 3 of 6 from 3-point range, 2 of 4 from the line, 31 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 3 steals. All 3 of those steals, like I mentioned, were on Luka. And Greg, there's sometimes when Jaylen gets out of control, and I think it can be frustrating. I kind of loved it last night, to be honest. Like, him, because there was a real intention behind it of setting the tone. And even though they need to get with Al and kind of figure out the switching, that's fine. I loved his first drive of the game. I think he drove straight to the hoop, missed the shot, got the rebound, tried to put it back, missed it. But I love that he was just like, yeah, if you're gonna leave me with any, because this is after the Luka trade was made, kind of the flaws we saw last night with the Lakers, and they had no center. And granted, Jackson Hayes is the center that we're talking about we're missing. So let's just be very realistic. It's Jackson Hayes. Like, this was a lot of the things that to me was like, some team has to be able to expose no center. You have Luka and Austin Reeves on the court in important moments, and LeBron's turned back the clock where it's like you can't really say all 3 of them anymore, because LeBron's like, hey, it's time to lock in. I'm gonna fucking lock in. But even when you have, and this is one of the rules that I feel like I always have for championship teams, you can't have 2 defensive liabilities out there. You can have 1. You can get by with 1, especially if it's going to be a guy like Luka, who on the other end causes most teams so many other problems. But if you have 2 defensive liabilities there, I think it's really hard to be a championship team. And so I love the aggressiveness from Jaylen, who loves getting physical, loves saying, you're going to give me somebody I can body. Let's go. That's what I yoked up for. That's why I did the Brian Barrett plan, so I can get in here with the gains and I can kind of bring it down low. So I loved him setting the tone in that way. And then I think this game, and I look at the Cleveland game as well, Tatum has 40 plus in both of those games. I know they lost the Cleveland game. They were without, KP and Drew Holiday. And we've talked about that game, so whatever. But I still think, looking at the way the two of them perform in those games, Jaylen Brown was super efficient in both of those
Mhm.
games. And
Yeah.
that's something that I think is super important. And then last night, knocking down 3 of 6 from 3, where we've been worried about that 3-point shot, looked a lot more confident and definitely took it as a challenge when Luka was kind of giving him the space for that shot. And so Jaylen Brown's just built for these moments, man. And when you watch the way that they play off each other, especially when you think back to the narrative of how do these guys mesh, how do they, ebb and flow together, they've got that down. They've got that down right now, and they each know when it's kind of each other's turn and where to go and how to make it work with all of the other guys around them as well.
Yeah, Jalen, I think Jalen and Jason early in the game, the the idea was let's attack Austin Reeves, right? I think
Yeah.
they both had him on the left block early in the game. They both went to a baseline spin. Jalen missed his, Jason made his. But then in the second half, it was still Hunt Austin Reeves with Al Horford, right? Al Horford
Yeah.
bringing it full circle, took him in the post multiple
That's why
times.
JJ got that tech, because Al Horford was just beating him up down in the post.
Right. Like how many times did they go Derek White, Al Horford, left side of the court, clear it out so that they could get a switch, right? As the Lakers are switching everything. So Al Horford sets that angle pick and roll for Derek White and then rolls to the basket with Austin Reeves on his back, swing the ball to Tatum. Tatum's at the top looking to see if he can get the ball into Al Horford. If not, they just run some action, a target in Luka Doncic, right? So it's like, how do we target Austin Reeves? Oh, we can't target him right there. He fought well there. Now let's bring Luka into the action and go to work. Like that's what they did in that third quarter. It was like
Can't have
that
two
was their
defensive liabilities.
that was
This
their
is my
offense.
case right here. Yeah,
Yep,
this
that
is
was
my
their
case.
offense. I know, I agree, and that's why the Knicks probably aren't a team that can really hold up in the playoffs because they have
Exactly.
two. Brunson, I love Jalen Brunson as a defender. I think he fights his ass off, but he's just not a great defender.
Yeah.
And then Towns, obviously, you can attack Towns whenever you want. When you look at the Cavs, you can attack Darius Garland. This is why it was so important to get Hunter, because Hunter can hold up out there. Dean Wade can hold up out there. Evan Mobley, obviously, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and Donovan Mitchell is just a great athlete. You can't really attack Donovan Mitchell, right? So, like the Cavs, who are they going to be able to put out there that the Celtics can't target? And then you look at like other teams, there's just not many teams that can do what the Celtics can do, and they can always have 5 great defenders on the court. So, and Peyton Pritchard was getting a lot of love. Sam Hauser is getting a lot of love on the broadcast. I think Richard Jefferson called Peyton Pritchard a top 20 ball pressure defender in the league. And then they were saying, is it time for us to just say Sam Hauser's a good defender? Is it time?
Yeah,
He's a good defender.
that
I was
was
like, yeah,
that
let's
was a good
go.
one.
Let's go.
Sam getting a lot of love on that one. Yeah, that was good to see. And like, last night was primarily about the Jays and Al. And so I think there wasn't as much coming from some of those other guys, but there was just a lot of like the little things that we got. Like to your point, some of the praise, and they got Luke had a couple of tip-ins last night.
Mhm.
Only plays 10 minutes, but that's kind of gonna be
Dude,
the playoff.
can we talk about Luke taking the ball 3 dribbles against LeBron James and not getting ripped? That was impressive, man. I was like, the moment he dribbled against LeBron James, I was like, oh, this is getting stolen. He held
Yeah.
up, he turned back around, he found Peyton Pritchard, rolled to the basket, and got an alley-oop. That was really impressive considering
The
LeBron.
the
I just thought LeBron was going to take the ball from him immediately.
The first thing that came to my mind is it was a couple weeks ago, we were talking about, man, Luke's been really aggressive, like trying to dunk on people. As soon as he decked the ball from the outside on LeBron, it's like, is he gonna try to drive all the way on LeBron and dunk on LeBron? Is that like what is Luke Cornett? What is going through Luke Cornett's mind right now? But yeah, I was getting ready. I like kind of because it was either gonna be, oh man, can't deck it versus LeBron, or I was getting ready to propel myself off the couch if he was gonna actually try to bring LeBron all the way to the basket. But yeah, that stood out to me quite a bit. But you're right, he didn't get stripped. He held up. The offensive possession went on. But I think last night was just a good example of when the Jays have it going on, the other guys just fill their spaces and do the little
Mhm.
things, right?
Yep.
Like, only 7 shots for Derek White, only 6 shots for Drew Holiday, who came back from that mallet finger. A little worried about Drew Holiday at the beginning of the game. I was like, oh man, maybe this mallet finger is messing him up. But you saw once again, they talked about in the post game, having him back defensively, how
Yeah,
much
he
that
looked good.
kind of changes who they are and what they can do. And even only 11 minutes from Sam Hauser, about 11 minutes from Luke Cornett, like Peyton Pritchard, just, didn't really hit his shots, but he was still fighting on the boards, right? That's something that they really pointed out is like, Peyton Pritchard gets looked at maybe from some teams that don't watch the Celtics all the time, just, man, Peyton Pritchard's a hell of a shooter. Like, he does a little bit more than that, man. Like, that guy gets in the mix, and I respect the hell out of Peyton Pritchard, the way that he fights for every rebound and just gets in there with these giants, and somehow just gets his hands on a lot of these basketballs. And it's really, really impressive to watch him go through that. But I love the idea that, when the Jays have it going on, everybody else is cool to kind of be like, hey, we're here to help you guys. You guys got this going here. We'll be here and be ready. And obviously, Al was a big component of that. And, it's just a really, really nice win for the Celtics last night.
The issue is going to be in a 7-game series. How do teams game plan for Peyton Pritchard to take him out of the game? In my opinion, like, Peyton Pritchard can be game planned out of a game, right? Still, this was the concern that I had last year when I was like calling for maybe an upgrade there at that spot. But I think it's important that the Lakers in this game put Jared Vanderbilt, who's arguably their best perimeter defender, on Peyton Pritchard. Like they said, we need to take Peyton Pritchard out of the game. We're going to put our best perimeter defender on Peyton Pritchard, which means that best perimeter defender is not covering one of our best players, right?
Yeah.
So they said, we're going to take Peyton Pritchard out of the game and hold up against Jason Tatum with Dorian Finney-Smith, XYZ, whatever you got to do. Well, that's something to be said there. And I think you can take Peyton Pritchard out of a game with an elite defender like Jared Vanderbilt, but that guy's not covering Jason Tatum. I'm okay with it.
Right. You're not sending out, and I like this guy last night. You're not sending Jordan Goodwin over there, right? You know what I mean? You're using one of your top assets.
Well, they put Goodwin on Tatum. They put Vanderbilt on Pritchard, and they put Goodwin on Tatum. That was the matchup.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's the point of it, is like the gravity that Pritchard brings at this point. Even if he's not having the what do you have, 60 plus points over the last 2 games before this, like, even when he's not having those type of nights, there's still an effectiveness to having Peyton Pritchard out there, and ain't nobody leaving him open. You know what I mean? Like, you're face guarding him basically. And so if you're just completely taking that away from the defense, I mean, I don't want to get too in front of my skis here. That's a Steph Curry type effect, right? Where you're just like, all right, I'm over here and I'm bringing your best defender with me. Like, go ahead. I got Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown over there that's doing work on Jordan Goodwin and Austin Reeves. So good luck. Go help them if you want. I'll be over here waiting for that ball to swing to me. So, yeah, it's exciting looking at this team and where we're at going forward. Again, we mentioned this last episode. One of the last real exciting games that we're going to get for the Celtics was last night, Wednesday. Another big game against the Thunder. Really looking forward to that. After that, it's going to be quite a bit of a drop-off, and be interesting to see how the Celtics take the last month and really about 5 weeks of the season, see what they do with all those games. But we will have that covered for you throughout the next couple of weeks here. We'll see what it looks like. But Wednesday night, we will be live after that game, Celtics Thunder, one of the biggest matchups of the season. So we will have that for you. Greg, let's go to our segments here before we wrap up the podcast today. I'm going to go to Stat of the Week because the one that I got here, I reserved it. I didn't want to put it in there when we were talking about Jason Tatum because I wanted to save it for this segment here. But this comes from Sean Grandy, who may came via Dick Lipe as well. But in Celtics history, a lot of Celtics history this week being made. There's been 3 games of 40 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. John Havlicek in 1968, Larry Bird in 86, Larry Bird in 92. Jason Tatum has now done this 3 times this season, twice within the last week and a half during this homestand. 40 points, 12 rebounds, 8 assists last night for Jason Tatum. Again, just speaking to the level that Jason Tatum is at. And, like, once again, I mean, I'm going back to our Mount Rushmore. This is where JT is climbing real quick on those Celtics lists. And of course, there's a lot of legends that you got to do. And catching Larry Bird, as he's talked about, and whether it's him or Russell, you have 1-2 on your Mount Rushmore. That puts you as a top 10 player all time. So that's a ways down the road before we ever get to that conversation. But coming up on the heels of all the other Celtics legends, JT is making a strong charge, and this once again just speaks to he is clearly one of the 2 to 3 best players in the world right now, and it's not a question.
I love it. My stat of the week, also probably just stolen from Dick Lipe. This is on Steve Bulpett. Yeah, it's actually a Dick Lipe stat. Okay. So this is directly from Steve Bulpett's at Steve B Hoop. What a 3-game stretch for 38-year-old Al Horford. 45 points, 26 rebounds, 6 steals, and 3 blocks and wins over the Lakers, Portland, and Denver. It's the first time he's put up these numbers over a 3-game span in just over 6 seasons, back in February 12th through the 21st in 2019. I mean, I was going to say, do we even need to do stat of the week because of that amazing stat you brought up with Horford Garden in isolation, holding up 20 in those 23 possessions? Like, that was the stat of the week, was the Al Horford stat from earlier.
Yeah, it's funny that you have that. I literally have that copy and pasted on my rundown sheet here as something that I hadn't gone to yet, but I have that same 3-game stretch from Dick Light and Steve Bulpett. But yeah, Al Horford, don't take Al Horford for granted, man. Appreciate Al Horford and everything that he gives you. God, I love that guy. And I also love just the way everyone talks about him after games like this. Again, Tatum doubling down, just the best team I've ever had. You know, you see everyone that, on Twitter just appreciating him. And it to me, it still goes back to his first stint, Greg, with the Celtics, when you and I were down here and, Lou Merloni's talking his shit. This is, 8 years ago, whatever it is. And you and I came home and you and I were just so isolated from like the Boston media and this is way before we had the podcast. And you and I were just like, man, I fucking love Al Horford. And I think at one point I might have even made a crazy statement where like, is Al Horford one of my top 5 favorite Celtics? And it was like, all right, let's pump the brakes. And honestly, he's in that conversation at least, but it's like, let's pump the brakes. I remember we went back and it still just blew our minds that people weren't appreciating Al Horford. And so to go from that first season to where we are now, and he's Uncle Al, he's overseeing all of, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown's career and development and being a mentor to this group in this era of Celtics, and now getting the rewards of being a champion, being a guy that's looked at in this just different light of Celtics history. And now, because he's been here, I think combined, this is going to be his 6th season with the Celtics, maybe 7th season with the Celtics. So like, he's a real Celtic, man. Like that's you got to have
as
like,
many
a
years
bit of
as
longevity.
KG, right?
Right. He's in that same bucket. Yeah. So,
Here's a
for Al
question for you,
Horford,
Will.
go for it.
If the Celtics win another title this year, do you have Al Horford above KG in your like all-time Celtics rankings?
Like just as my personal favorites, or like as how
Both.
I would rank them? No, I don't. I mean, KG is just, we're watching the Celtic City documentary. They talk about like founding fathers for like the Celtics definitively becoming the sport, like basketball and the Celtics being the team that I love more than anything else, even more than the Red Sox, who are easily number 1 in my life, basically up until about the KG era. Like he's just a founding father as far as like my love for the Celtics and basketball. Even though I already liked the Celtics, KG took it to another level, right? Like that brought everything to a different world.
Yeah,
So,
I don't. Just to be clear, I don't think it's an argument.
yeah.
I'm
trying to think about it. I'm like, it's not. I love Al though. Al is right in that mix of guys, especially like contemporary. Like when we're just looking at who are my favorite guys of all time, I always, Twan was like the first guy that I really loved. Paul always gonna have a special place. KG, Tatum, Al, and then it's like Isaiah Thomas. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's like he's in this group of like 6 or 7 guys. I'm just like, who are my personal favorites? Al Horford is just firmly entrenched in
Vitaly
that mix.
Potapenko. Yeah, I got you.
Potapenko. Yeah. There was some NBA video game. They used to always say his name like that. I used to love that. Potapenko for 2. All right, let's go to our in or out segment of the week before we wrap this up. You go first on this one, Greg.
Are we both just doing daylight savings?
I have a different one, so I can go first if you want.
No, I got
Or
it. I got it. Yeah. All right. So I did a little bit of more research into daylight savings because I woke up this morning and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, how I thought we got rid of this a couple of years ago. There was like a news article that we got rid of daylight savings. So here's a little bit of research. So in 2022, the U.S. Senate unanimously approved the Sunshine Protection Act, which would make daylight saving time permanent. However, U.S. House of Representatives did not pass it, and President Joe Biden did not sign it. So I didn't misremember this. So this was actually a thing. We were trying to get rid of daylight savings. So apparently there is a bill back in 1966 that it's like the Standard Time Bill. That's like the name of the bill, the Standard Time Bill of 1966, that gives states the right to ignore daylight savings and remain in standard time. But the issue now is that more states want to remain in daylight savings time. They don't want to be in standard time. They want to be in daylight saving time, which is illegal. So you can't do that. So these are the states that currently want to remain in daylight savings time: Alabama, Colorado, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Minnesota, Mississippi, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, South Carolina, Tennessee, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. It's 2025, Will. Why are we still doing daylight savings time? Joe Biden, this is probably your biggest failure as a president of the United States, is the fact that you didn't make this Sunshine Protection Act go into effect. And Donald Trump, I disagree like viscerally with 99.9% of the things that you say and the things that you do. I would support you in this. If you get rid of daylight savings times, I'll be like, I got to give Trump that one.
Gotta give him one. Gotta give him one. Yeah, I mean, this dates back to like the reason it exists is something to do with farming. I don't know exactly the reason. I think it's something to do with farming back in the colonial era. I don't really know
It's just
the
so because of the Earth's tilt and the axis of it, like during certain times of the year, farmers don't have as much light, right? So by
right.
changing the clock, it allows farmers to actually like have more light. But they could just adjust their normal fucking schedule. Like
Mhm.
we don't need to change the clocks for the
Yeah,
farmers
yeah,
to
yeah.
wake up
This
at a
we
different
don't we
time.
don't need to change the clocks. And so you did say one thing that I thought was interesting. You said it's illegal not to, because I know Arizona does not observe it. Arizona does not change their clocks. They have
I
one
think
time all
they're
year
on
round.
standard time. So they're in
Okay.
standard time. It's not any state can just be like, we're not doing daylight savings time. We're going to be on standard time. But all
They're the
these
only one I
states,
know that is there any other states listed from your research that do? Arizona's the only one I know
it's like
definitively that
maybe Hawaii or some territories like America
okay.
Samoa, stuff like that. So like all those states that I listed, they want to be in daylight savings time for whatever reason. They don't want to be
Yeah.
in standard time. Any state can just be like, as long as it passes in the state legislature, they can just go into standard time whenever they want. So that's something that I believe in
Hmm.
Texas right now. They're exploring that option.
Well, so here's the thing. In like honestly, let's just all just coordinate on one time. That's all we need to do. The worst thing is gonna be if because I work for my day job, I do have a couple of clients that are in
Mm,
Arizona.
yeah,
And you know how bad collectively we are with time zones.
yeah,
Good God, it's even tougher when you're dealing with one that just stays still and it's around others that are in mountain time, central time. It I always have to like end a call with like a 3-minute discussion about time zones because I'm
yeah,
like I just want to get this right. What time is it? And I have to ask the dumbest question like, hey, let me. This is gonna sound weird, but what time is it exactly where you are right now? So that way I can do the math and try to figure out.
right,
Because if you just tell me, oh, I'm on Arizona time, I'm like, that's not going to help, man. It's 10:30 a.m. right now where I am. What time is it? I'm setting this meeting for next week. I need to know if I'm going an hour before, an hour after, 2 hours. Like I got to do the math here on the spot, or we're just going to be on the wrong time
right.
going forward here. So yeah, I don't really get why we need to keep doing this. And honestly, like yeah, I was surprised by it just as much as you were. I had no idea. I was like, I woke up before my alarm. I was like, what's going on? And then my wife Lorena was the one that was like, did you know it was daylight savings time? I was like, it's making sense why everything just feels completely off this morning.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah, I'm with you, Greg. Don't want to give Trump any credit or shout outs, but I would appreciate if we just got rid of this abomination. We don't need it. It's just completely unneeded. All right, let me go to my in or out. And I'll bring us back to basketball here to end this, and it's playing off of just how exciting last night was and how exciting I'm anticipating Wednesday to be, and the drop off that's to come. So this in or out is a little bit selfish because it's going to be a long stretch after the Celtics game on Wednesday. We might get one, maybe two more playoff level type games for this team before we got to wait until either April 19th or 20th, which is when the first round of the playoffs will begin. So that's about 5 to 6 weeks of just non-playoff level basketball that we're going to have to go through. So for this season, I think overall I'm probably still okay to indifferent with the in-season tournament, or excuse me, with the play-in tournament. I'm out on the play-in tournament for this year. It's just an extra week that we got to wait with a bunch of teams that nobody gives a shit about. When you look at
yeah,
the East right now, you've got the Hawks and the Magic are the 7-8 seed. Hawks are 4 games under 500. Magic are 5 games under 500. Heat are 6 games under 500, and the Bulls are 12 games under 500. I'm sorry. My biggest issue with the play-in tournament is there has to be a limit to 82 games mattering how far you are, like from even being a
right.
decent team to get a
Yeah,
last chance. Like the East, Play it out. However it plays out in 82 games, you guys do not deserve a play-in tournament. On the flip side, the West does have teams that probably do actually deserve a play-in tournament, except the Mavericks are so beaten up. Guys, your season's a fucking disaster. Go try to tank and get Cooper Flag. Like, get the hell out of here. The Spurs don't have Wemby. They're not coming back. The Blazers, nobody wants to see the Blazers make a run at the play-in tournament. Who cares? The Kings, you guys are boring. Like, I'm sorry. I just, what do I want to see? The Bulls 2.0, where you just swap Sabonis and Vucevic. That's all you guys are. You're the Bulls 2.0. And then you just have the Timberwolves and Clippers. Cool. Let them figure it out for the 7-8 seed. You have your 8 West teams. We don't need a play-in tournament this year. There needs to be a committee that can veto the play-in tournament if we're just like, guys, don't need it. And obviously the East is a little bit of an easier case because there's so many teams that are well under 500. They just don't deserve it. And in the West, I'm just being subjective. I just don't care about the Kings or Mavericks anymore. Like, get them out of here. We have 8 teams that make sense. Let's roll with that. So that's what I'm out on for this year, Greg.
I mean, it is tough because obviously you have TV deals and all that stuff, right? So like you're selling that to whoever your partners are, right? But I feel like there also needs to be some sort of caveat in there, right? Like there's a week off, right? So we all get a week off regardless. It's either a week off because of the play-in tournament or a week off because there's a week off and there's no play-in tournament.
Yeah.
But I still think it makes sense for the 7 and 8 seeds to play it out. Right. So you can still have that game. Be like, all right, do you want 7? You're either going to get the 7 seed or the 8 seed here. And then like,
yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I think that can still exist. But the 9 and 10, I totally agree, man. Like there's no need to really have that happen, especially with these teams that are so bad. And most of these teams, let's be real, would probably rather just get more chances to be in the lottery. Right. They don't even want to play these games. It's like the rare exceptions. I feel like the whole point of this was just in case one of your mega stars was in the 9 or 10 seed, like Steph Curry and LeBron last year or 2 years ago.
Times.
Yeah.
2 times they've both been in the play-in tournament.
Like that happens. Right. And we get it. You want to see your stars play in meaningful games, but it's just like not you. If your stars are stars, they're going to be out of the play-in tournament, right? They're going to be able to like take their teams out of the play-in tournament. So, I don't really like the play-in tournament either, man.
Yeah, I think eventually it's too much, right? Like I get it, like to your point, the TV deals, but the Bulls at 26 and 38, it's a fucking joke that they get even an opportunity to make the playoffs after whatever their record is going to finish being. So it is what it is. But
you could do if you're worried about TV ratings and getting people, with your partners and whatnot, do the draft of like the top seeds get to pick and televise that. Like the top seeds get to pick who their opponent is. So many people would tune into that. I would tune into that over a Bulls versus Heat game. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see Bulls versus
You know
Heat.
what? And I literally just thought of this, but this could be an interesting thing to do to fill that week. Is once again, this is tough because it's not the players going to have to be bought in. But I was going to say, instead of the ping pong balls, you take the 4 teams with the worst records, you seed them 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and they play for the top 4 picks.
Love that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. That would, the only, like I said, once again, the only problem with that is if you have a guy who's like about to be a free agent, he's like, why am I going to help your team try to get a pick? You know what I mean? So that's the flaw in it, but it's a pretty cool idea, right? I just thought of that. So that would actually make for some good TV, especially when there's a guy like Cooper Flag and teams are, like I saw the other night, the Raptors were in a close game and then basically just benched their whole starting team for the last like 6 minutes. And then they so that they could lose by 2 to the Wizards, because that's going to be a team they're battling for ping pong balls.
Right.
So now it's like, hey, as long as you're in that top 4, now you got, hey, Scotty Barnes, like, do you want a running mate? Do you want Cooper Flag? Go fucking beat the Wizards and beat the Jazz right now in 2 games. And Cooper Flag is your reward.
But then if you're RJ Barrett, you're like, why am I playing hard so they can find a replacement for me?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So that's where the flaw is. So it's difficult. But yeah, play-in tournament. Yeah, not looking forward to that. But we'll see here. Wednesday night, I'm looking forward to that. Celtics, Thunder. That game's going to be awesome. The anticipation for that will be crazy. So once again, make sure you guys are locked in with us here at Green with Envy. We will have a post-game show for you right after that one, breaking that all down. There is also Celtics Jazz in between or before that game on Monday night. So check that out. Not going to lie, we're not going to have a lot of coverage or a lot to say on that game. doesn't really matter when you have these two
No,
big games in Utah.
maybe that's a date night. Date night. Take
Yeah,
your
yeah.
take your wife out.
Yeah, exactly. That might be a all possessions game that I watch Tuesday morning. We'll have to see what that turns into. But that's gonna do it for this episode here of Green with Envy. As always, appreciate you guys checking in with us. Make sure you are following us across social medias. Watch us on YouTube, and as always, you guys can check in with us in the DMs or CelticsNoise@gmail.com. Hit us up in our inbox. Greg, any final thoughts before we send the people out?
You said, I think I can do 30 minutes today. We did 50, my friend.
That's how it
Congratulations.
always goes. That's how it always goes. Anytime you feel like you got a 30 in you, it's usually a 50 to 60-minute podcast. So got to give the people what they want. We're done for this one. We'll be back Wednesday night. We will see you guys later. Enjoy your week. Peace.